mold has an affinity for fat, right? Well,
Okay.
what is every single nerve supply wrapped in? Fat. We found 2 patients in this last quarter or so at the office doing heavy metal tests that actually had uranium poisoning. We're exposed to stuff that we don't know, and in doing so, you have all these downstream effects that you end up dealing with your health. The surgeon said, oh yeah, we're scheduled Monday through Friday all day long taking parotid gland tumors out. That's all we do. And it's 100% related to Bluetooth and cell phones. The average kid now is spending, if you're under the age of 18, you're spending at least 7 hours on a phone every single day. 7 hours looking at a screen that retards dopamine production in the brain, leading to sleeplessness, depression, anxiety, etc. And I think we can both agree that like emotional issues in younger people is at an all-time high.
Welcome to The Way Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Way Forward. Yay! Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. David Erb.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited. So just to give some context on how I found this guy, literally somebody just DM'd me a message of a video of him talking about EMF, and then I looked him up and I realized you're actually only 2 hours from me. So I was like, we gotta get in person.
Greatest state in the world.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so let's just start by telling our audience a little bit about you and kind of how you started your practice and all that.
Oh.
Yeah, I want the whole story.
So there is a book actually, but
Okay.
No, so I started chiropractic school, ended up having my own heart issue where my heart was dying in my chest. It went to 240 beats a minute, would stop for 2 seconds at a time. I was told I needed heart surgery or die and be on 4 meds the rest of my life. And found corrective care chiropractic, which is a little different than most people think chiropractic is. And so it turned out that the problem was the electrical system. We're going to talk about a lot of electric stuff today.
Yeah.
That my electrical system, my nervous system was out of alignment, and the number one cardiologist in the world, basically the Southwest, who I saw, never even looked at it. This one chiropractor, including my wife, corrected my spine, and literally an irreversible medical condition of my heart completely reversed, never took the drugs, and that catapulted us into being advocates for people who just don't even know what chiropractic is, including chiropractors. And now we've started a couple, probably just less than 500 offices in 39 states.
Wow.
Including Zimbabwe, Africa, and we're here in North Texas in Capel and Southlake.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really wild. Almost every doctor that I've spoken to who has kind of strayed away from like standard medicine has had some kind of crazy medical experience. Like they were severely sick and then figured out like, oh, like this method that I'm learning, like one of the Dr. Jill Carnahan, she was in school to become a medical doctor and then got severely sick, ended up getting cancer at age 20, and then was like, oh, this whole system I'm learning can't take care of me. How am I supposed to take care of others with this system?
Yeah, what I find after 27 years of this are the people that are the most successful are usually the most passionate, and what drives the most passion is the most experience, sometimes heartbreaking, personally or a loved one or something else. I mean, even this Casey Means, who you sing on Tucker and everybody else now, she had this massive experience being #1 in Stanford medical school, and then now she's like this known figure. And I would say to everybody that's watching this, if you're going through a really hard time, and this is like, hopefully this really helps a lot of people, but if they're going through a super hard time, just know this can definitely be used to catapult you. It may be the reason that you're successful, maybe the reason that you get your health back, it may be the reason that everything turned around financially, career, purpose in your whole life, because this one health issue you had and you found solutions to it. That's what it was for me.
I always say, like, this is going to make a really good story one day. Whenever things are going really wrong, I'm like, it's going to be a good story. I'm going to figure this out.
That's good.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, because I think when people think of like chiropractor, they think like, oh, I'm going to go get my neck popped, my back popped, all this stuff. What do you guys really do?
So there is a lot of that. And
Yeah.
that's why people think that's chiropractic. And maybe I run a bit of a risk of being controversial, but for me, chiropractic is not that.
Yeah.
Chiropractic is about finding interference to that electrical system that's in your body so that it is freed up to run the whole body and develop health, instead of choking that off and shutting that down or reducing it so that your body develops sickness and disease. The problem with it is because the chiropractic schools have been so medicalized, and this is my opinion, but have been so medicalized that now chiropractors graduating chiropractic school really are more metapractors than they are chiropractors. 70% of chiropractors don't take x-rays, 90% just treat symptoms. So if you ask people if chiropractic works for them or not, they'll say, well, it is working because I feel better, or it's not working because I don't feel better, or it's terrible, chiropractic's terrible because I feel worse. The problem with it is chiropractic's never been therapeutic. It's never supposed to, like, I hope you feel better with chiropractic, but the most important thing is you got a nerve supply that goes to your organ and works. Like, we've seen countless, literally countless, I can't even count them, how many people were infertile who their organs turned back on and came alive again.
That's
now
so
they have, we just had somebody who just had their 5th baby who was supposed to have a hysterectomy. Now she just had her 5th baby. And, you know, heart stuff. I had a 17-year-old the other day who was in tachycardic arrhythmia, 186 beats per minute, laying down, resting. We're going to go to the emergency room, came to my office and said one adjustment. Within 60 seconds, his heart rate went down to 68, and it's never gone back up since. And it was all in his neck. Like, people just don't know what chiropractic is actually for, and most people think that they're getting chiropractic when they get, you know, twisted this way, twisted that way, twist, and pop. And that's manipulation, but that's not, in my opinion, that's not chiropractic. And I think there's so much to be said when people have health issues to check that system out, to remove interference in a very scientific, very validated way, and lead people into that as a lifestyle in staying healthy. Like, I had a guy that his coworker gave him a hard time when he asked him about going to the chiropractor. He goes, you go there all the time? He goes, yeah, 18 years. He goes, oh my God, what's wrong with your back? And he goes,
exactly.
Nothing, because I go. And he's in his 70s doing Krav Maga on no meds. My mom is 81. She's about to do her like 12th full marathon at 81.
What?
Like, there's just, like, you can live like nobody else. You just have to go about approaching your health like nobody else, which is why we're talking today.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people think you're just going to address a pain point, which comes all the way back to like the current medical system that we're taught to believe in is like, you have pain, go get that thing for that pain. Don't think about where the pain is stemming from, or the food that you ate, or the toxins that are around you. Just go treat that one thing. So I think that's why people think of chiropractic in that way, is like, okay, I have pain in my neck, I'm gonna go see a chiropractor, rather than like, oh, I have like hyperthyroidism, I'm gonna go see a chiropractor.
2 people in the last month got off their thyroid meds because their thyroid started working.
Yes.
But we are, to your point, we're actually really indoctrinated into this type of thinking. Like,
don't go further.
Well, it's just, there's so many commercials, there's so much exposure. I mean, you can't be born without a medical doctor in the United States. You can't be pronounced dead without a medical doctor in the United States. Like, you can't do anything without a medical doctor in the United States. And medical doctors in this paradigm is have a symptom, fix a symptom. But it's not about go back to find the cause.
Right.
You know, and we were just talking before we actually started hitting record about all these things with, again, I know we're going to talk about EMFs and different things, but like, just causation in general, mold and multi-chemical sensitivities and subluxation, we talk about with chiropractic and the spine being out of alignment. All of these things are all causation, but if they've got a symptom that has a pill associated with it, the whole world goes, see, I took the pill, my acid reflux is better, see, it worked.
Yeah.
But it didn't work, it just masked a symptom, which now is having an outflow of all kind of other effects that people don't want to have associated, so.
I'm really glad to be talking to you and to know that you exist. It's nice to know that people like you exist in the world, because it's really hard to find. Let's talk about that for a second. Like, what do you look for when you're trying to find someone to get that proper health care? Like, I've kind of been trying to look for that answer.
Well, so you really, the whole basis that everybody's looking for, actually, whether they know it or not, is somebody who looks for cause.
Right.
Like so many kids have come to the office, and it's a nightmare to have a kid that has a seizure. Not that I've experienced that, but we have lots of parents coming with babies with seizures or kids with seizures. And you know, they take these long questionnaires and this interview process with a doctor or a PA or somebody about their diet and their meds or their sleep patterns or exposure to toxins, all these things, just to get down to all of that, and then take that, set that aside and go, okay, so there's 2 options. We can use the newer drugs, which are more effective but have more side effects, or the older drugs that aren't effective, they've got less side effects, and then there's no other discussion. Like, how did this happen? You went from not having seizures to having seizures. What caused it? And nobody's talking about it. So in approaching finding a healthcare professional, for most, I would say, literally the discussion needs, are we are we a symptom base, or I mean, are we going to actually look for causation? And that needs to be when the first little, if this is doctor-patient
the first 8
relationship,
minutes you get with them.
yeah, you go in and say, hey, let's, like, what are we doing here? Like if you found something, what is your treatment option for that? And one of the things I love being a part of Max Living, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but Max Living has hundreds of offices throughout 39 states. And each of these, I'm a coach with that company about teaching doctors how to have a patient-doctor relationship that is, hey, let's be in this for the long haul and just keep you healthy and not just treat symptoms. But also, if you got issues, let's figure out what's causing that. Like I had kids, I had a family come in, and both kids had like a breathing issue and like ear infections and sick all the time. And every kid that comes to our office doesn't have ear infections. Like that just is unheard of. But these kids kept having ear infections. Like, listen, guys, something else is going on. Let's not keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And so when we dived in and we checked some things out, they had bought a house, second owner house, brand new basically house. And it turns out when we actually dug in, we actually had a camera put behind the wall, and they had an undisclosed water leak in an upstairs bathroom. And the whole wall that was part of their bedroom was full of mold.
Oh, wow.
And the way I found it is they went on vacation. Every time they went on vacation, all their infections went away and the breathing issues went away. And so once we found that, we addressed the issue. They've never had the issue again. And there's so many people that have something very similar. They have a cause, and if they address the cause, their issues would go away. Because the body, the operating system of the body is just health.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then we got to figure out what the bug is.
Yeah, that's what led us to figure out there was mold in our previous home. Like my kids, I mean, they've never been on any kind of medications. They eat really well, you know, and all of a sudden my kid's getting like back-to-back sick, and I'm like, okay, it's something else, like something is going on. What's so wild to me though is the mold thing, because I don't know if you've like done any research on this, but I've talked to some people with the mold and EMF connection, and I talked to one mold expert, Jennifer Nitriro, and she was talking about how when she goes into homes, she actually remediates mold and EMF, because EMF is causing mold to grow by like 600 times or something wild. And so her belief, this is her opinion, is that, you know, EMF is what's causing our kind of like mold epidemic. Like having Wi-Fi and smart everything everywhere
100%.
is like communicating to these mold spores and causing fear in the molds, basically, because they like communicate, and then it's replicating and causing growth.
They adapt. It's just that living organisms adapt. That's what the definition for life is, that things adapt. But you actually expose like bacteria to antibiotics, they get stronger if they don't die, right?
Right.
Well, EMF to mold does the same thing. They adapt, they start producing more mold spores, everything else. Here's another crazy thing about mold, and you probably already know this.
No, I love it.
Mold, but mold has an affinity for fat, right? Well, what is every single nerve supply wrapped in? Fat. It's how it transducts electricity through each nerve. And so when you actually have somebody who's mold toxic, you actually have somebody who actually has a nervous system that is under attack. And so when you look at people who have like mold toxicity, you actually have people that are more EMF sensitive. And the reason for that is EMF, it's an electromagnetic field. Those fields affect nerve conductance and synapses and things like this, and how the electrical part of the body works. So when you have somebody that's got mold toxicity, now that's affecting the nerve supply, which is now more sensitive to the magnetic fields.
Interesting.
And so it all...
Because you see, I interview researchers and medical professionals, but I also research just people who have hypersensitivity to EMF, and like, how did this happen? Because they're like, we're totally fine. And then all of a sudden, I got exposed to mold. I found out I had Lyme disease. I started getting crazy allergies. And then all of a sudden, I'm super sensitive to EMF. That's like a really good explanation as to why. I mean, I always think about it in the most basic sense of like, okay, you have this toxic burden bucket and it can only go so high. And once it's full with the environmental toxins, you're going to start reacting to all of these different things. But there's even a deeper, explanation for what's going on.
It is, yeah. It's that whole bucket theory where you're doing fine until it reaches the top and starts to spill over.
And then they seem like hypochondriacs.
No, exactly. Yeah. And those patients that, listen, if you help enough of those people talk, and now we're who you come see when you've seen everybody else and they called you crazy or whatever else, because you've got so many things going on. And they are extremely hard cases to really dive in and find, because every single patient is individual. Like somebody who started with mold, and some people may have a off-the-chart mold toxicity and have no heavy metal, but they've actually got another person who's up to their back teeth in heavy metal. We found 2 patients in this last quarter or so at the office doing heavy metal tests that actually had uranium poisoning. These are people that live in North Texas. They're not making like
Wow.
nuclear bombs. Like, how does this happen? But we're exposed to stuff that we don't know, and in doing so, you have all these downstream effects that you end up dealing with your health. And for me, one of the joys of my life is seeing those people come back to life again and get their life back.
Yeah, knowing that there is a way back, I think that's really important. It doesn't have to be just a line of prescriptions that are keeping you just stable enough to get through the day.
Which
Yeah.
is the end all for a lot of people, yeah.
Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, I-N-TUNE, T-U-N-E 30 for 30% off your entire order.
Okay, so going back to what you were saying about like the electrical systems, can you explain that a little bit further on, what you were saying about chiropractic care? When you come in, it's not like, you're looking at the communication systems in your body and making sure that those pathways are open.
Are good.
So can you just talk into that?
Perfect. And it's so crazy that so many people have even gone to chiropractors and never heard this. So this may be fresh for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's kind of fresh for me, and I go to a chiropractor.
So this is going to be good.
I'm going to go and be like, hang on a second.
I hope that your chiropractor still loves me. But, so your spine should be straight up and down. Everybody kind of knows that because we got checked in school. You had to bend over in front of the school nurse looking for scoliosis. Scoliosis is any degree left to right that's above a single digit. So if it's 10 or above, we call that a scoliosis.
Okay.
Anything that's more than 3 degrees is enough to change the electrical system itself, right? So there was a guy that won a Nobel Prize, Dr. Irvin Kaur, in '76 for a paper. This is the name of the paper. Get ready for this. The Spinal Cord as the Organizer of Disease Processes, paper 2. Won the Nobel Prize.
Okay.
And he said that as the spine becomes distorted, it literally causes a sympathetic overdrive. So parasympathetic and sympathetic, right? It's just two parts of an autonomic nervous system. That the sympathetic, that's your fight or flight, Parasympathetics rest and digest, it's relax, right? This fight or flight, like it actually starts to actually climb and climb and climb and climb in the tissue cell, right? So let's say that you slipped and fell, or you're stressed, or you got in a car accident 3 years ago or whatever else, and it started the progression of a subluxation, which is a movement of a bone or several bones in your neck or spine. And that started to put a little bit of a change in that electrical system. Everybody talks about bone on nerve, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that.
Yeah.
But it changes the electrical system, right? That causes downstream effects to where the nerve goes into the tissue, so you start having this sympathetic overdrive, and you start to have cellular changes, which means the energy system of the cell, the mitochondria starts to break down, the waste elimination processes, the DNA replication, the RNA, all of it starts to break down, and we start to have cellular replication breakdown, and then we start to have neoplastic activity. Now that's cancer on that side. Okay. But let's just take a like thyroid, like these two ladies just got off a thyroid. The thyroid, if you get it checked, should be within certain limits, right? So if you're looking at T3 or T4 ratios, whatever else, if it's in those limits, a medical doctor would say, you're fine. And then the patient goes, I don't feel fine. Like if I look at the checklist of all the things that it takes to be diagnosed, I have all those things. And yet I keep this lady, I'm thinking of a patient, for 10 years, kept getting her thyroid checked. She said, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. She has a reversed curve in her neck. So your curve should look like this. So we should be straight up and down. I mentioned that. From the side view, you should have a curve in the neck this way, curve in the mid back this way, and then a curve in the lower back like this. When it's in these 3 consecutive curves, there's no stretch or tension on that electrical supply, that spinal cord. So everything is connected right. This lady had a reversal, which had changed that electrical system to the thyroid, which caused the cells to start changing how they were adapting, how they're resilient, how they connected and adapted to what the nervous system, the brain was telling it to do. And as a result, the second by second hormonal shifts that your body needs to make, dealing with either getting up and running, or whether you're eating or you're fasting, or if you're under stress today, or you didn't sleep right, or whatever else, it couldn't adapt. And so she had all this downstream effects of thyroid. And then we started adjusting her, and literally in less than 4 months, and hadn't changed her diet, corrected the spine in about 4 weeks, but over 4 months, she lost 80 pounds.
Holy crap.
And it's literally, yeah, and people were like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just going to see my chiropractor. But it's
know
the
what this
fact,
guy's
yeah, it's like this voodoo magic he's doing. But it's just, the difference is not just, cracking someone's spine or twisting it, but giving an adjustment so the body can receive it, and then giving them some rehab and things to do that's specific as an individual for them, so they correct that electrical system. So whether it's pelvic floor, whether it's thyroid, whether it's heart, like my situation, or whatever, everybody needs a good nerve supply. The problem with it is we've all been taught that, I have this conversation with the average person, because trust me, if I'm sitting on a plane, guess what we're gonna talk about? 2 things, Jesus and chiropractic. But someone will go, what do you do? And then I start into this, and my next question is, I go, well, it's awesome that you love chiropractic. When's the last time you got adjusted? And they want to go support me emotionally, and they're like, oh, I got adjusted twice last year. And I'm like, okay, so I know what I'm dealing with now. And for me, that's a person who's looking for chiropractic for symptom relief. What I want the whole world to do is I want the whole world to start using chiropractic as a lifestyle to maintain health, to maintain their spine. Because if you look at people now, I've been doing this for almost going on 30 years, not quite 30 years, but the people that have been constantly under care, I can look at people under care for 15, 20, 25 years, their spines look amazing. And then just the other day, I had somebody that saw me 15 years ago, kept me in their back pocket mentally if she had, quote, issues, came back to see me, has not done anything for her spine, and what do you think we saw?
Yeah.
Spine looked like melted candle wax. And everybody thinks that that's just the natural progression of disease, or spine, it's just arthritis. But what's the one force against you every day on this planet? Gravity, right? So if I've got these 3 consecutive curves, what it does is it does this, so it disperses the weight of gravity throughout each joint in your spine. So if you've got good curves and it's straight up and down, every single one of your discs and joints, they last way longer than you will ever live if you live to 130.
Yeah.
And so we have people 80s and 90s who have perfect spines and great nerve supplies, no meds, outwork everybody. But you can have people in their 20s, 30s, or 40s who have spines, number one, have gone to a chiropractor, didn't get x-rays, don't even know what their spine looks like, but have spines that are degenerative because they're out of alignment. And whenever they go to the chiropractor, it's all, how's your range of motion? How do you feel? Oh, I'm glad you're feeling better. Pop and crack if it does hurt, and then come back and see me win.
Oh my gosh.
When it hurts again. So that's how the system works.
Yeah.
And there's 12 different Nobel Prizes to prove that that's how it works. And yet when you talk to people about chiropractic, they go, well, I heard it's not really scientific, or
you get that a lot. People kind of pass chiropractic off a lot.
Well, there's a reason for that. There was actually a lawsuit in '84, and 4 chiropractors sued the American Medical Association and the American Hospital Association and 3 other entities, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they found the AMA guilty of conspiring to actually get rid of the profession of chiropractic through disinformation and not allowing them to get payment from insurance companies, to literally discriminate against them and having hospital rights, et cetera. So the reason the whole world...
we need people sick.
Well, up until 1963...
That's how we make our money.
Up until 1963, there were more adjustments given for infections and infectious disease than there was for neck pain, back pain, or headaches. And up till 1963, it looked like chiropractors were going to actually overtake medicine as the #1 form of healthcare for every U.S. citizen. And that's when they actually came up with a plan, and it was called, I forget the name of it now, but it's called the Iowa Plan, I think. And they actually instituted it, and they literally almost got rid of chiropractic. And that's why in 1984 it went to the Supreme Court.
That's so crazy. Okay, so you just blew my mind. I'm gonna have to listen back to that to really understand everything you were just saying. But how did your journey kind of lead you to EMF? Because I feel like that's one of those things where it's kind of like the final curtain you peek behind because it's so out of sight, out of mind. But for you, you're dealing with these electrical signals all the time. I had talked to a neuroscientist who had said we learn that our body is an electrical being, but we never make the connection. And then over 40 years of doing EEG brain scans on children, he was like, what is going on? He just kept seeing these changes. And then that's what led him to EMF. But like, what led you to kind of really start acknowledging that as a potential?
Well, I'm an eternal critic. Like I look at everything with like I would never have even been a chiropractor because I thought chiropractors were quacks, which I know God has a sense of humor. But when I see things, you can't help but not see it, right?
Yeah.
So like when we started practice, what is it, 26, 27 years, or whatever it's been now, we just never saw any of the things that we're seeing now. And I think one of the reasons is just was not this EMF stuff. Like there were barely even cell towers back then. Like when I was in chiropractic school, we didn't have cell phones. There were no cell phones. We had beepers. I thought it was pretty cool. I had a beeper. It's like, look, I'm a real doctor. I've got a beeper.
Yeah.
But now, it's not that it's just there's cell phones. The cell phones we have now will cook you compared to the little old flip phones that we used to have. Like, it is nuts. And there was no Bluetooth. Bluetooth didn't exist back then. And now Bluetooth is everywhere. I mean, in 1990, they came out with hearing aids, and it wasn't until 2010 that they actually acquired technology small enough to put Bluetooth in hearing aids.
Yeah.
And then now, my God, it's like crazy. So what caused us to look at it was the fact that we started seeing clinically people really start coming in with things that were so associated. I had a firefighter come in, and he wore this, remember the older, this is several years ago, the Bluetooth.
Yeah, that has like the little mic.
Little mic on it
Yeah.
right there. But he would wear it all day long because he was, I think maybe a captain or something, and he was taking calls all day long on this thing and just leaving it in there. And I remember him coming in, and he was a patient, and this just never happened to patients. And because you get a nervous system, it just protects you from almost everything. But he came in as an active patient and had this big tumor pop up.
Whoa.
And I was like, bro, you need to go in on that one because you're a patient already, something's up. And so he goes in, and sure enough, he had a parotid gland tumor. Emergency room said, oh yeah, we see several of these a week. Which ear do you, and this is the emergency room doctor, which ear do you keep your Bluetooth device in?
No way.
And it was the same ear. Sent him to a surgeon to have it removed. And the surgeon said, oh yeah, we're scheduled Monday through Friday all day long taking parotid gland tumors out. That's all we do. And it's 100% related to Bluetooth and cell phones. And since then, I've seen one after. So I didn't really want to look at this.
Right.
But once you see it, and now our aged population who have hearing aids, they come in, it's almost impossible to find a hearing aid that's not Bluetooth connected. And when you're giving it to them, you can't turn it off with your phone. Like you connect it to your phone and then turn the Bluetooth off. You can disconnect it from your phone, but the Bluetooth is still on from the device. And
It's like searching. It's probably even more powerful because it would be like searching for a connection.
searching.
Or,
I don't know if
Yeah.
it's more, but just having the EMF turned or the Bluetooth turned on, the EMF is, I mean, exponentially higher
Yeah.
than just the EMF that comes off from the computer graphic card and stuff that's in there that's processing sound.
Sure.
Because that's just a byproduct of having the electrical processing of that computer inside that thing. That's a byproduct. When you turn the Bluetooth on, it is the product. EMF is the product. It's producing it so that it connects. And when you start looking at like the, I did a little research. This is not my expertise. I told
Yeah,
you it wasn't.
I love it.
But I did a little bit of research, and the specific absorption rate, or the SAR.
Yes.
When you look at like hearing devices, and like hearing aids and like ear pods and things like this, it gives you a SARS rating, which is not how much EMF, the dangerous stuff coming off. It doesn't even measure that. It measures absorption rates.
Right. When you're touching it.
When it's a touching, but here's the thing, it's not when you're touching it.
Yeah.
And to figure out what the SARS rate is, they actually use what's called a SAM, which is a specific anthropomorphic mannequin. I
Right.
probably butchered that, but it's a mannequin that's digitized that reads how much absorption rates a human would get, except for the fact that the mannequin is 200. It mimics a 220-pound male that's 6'2".
Oh, I didn't know that part of that.
And now watch. Does a 220-pound male that's 6'2" absorb at the same rate as a 110-pound little tiny female who's like 85 years old? The answer is no.
Yeah.
A 110-pound human being will absorb way more than
Yeah.
a 220-pound
Or a child who has the AirPods in for like comfort all the time. You know?
So you start looking at this SAR qualification, and governments around the world will set limits to what these ratings can be for devices, so they'll quote be safe. But it's not even on the same. It's not even talking about emission of the device. It's talking about absorption rates, and it's talking about absorption rates in a mannequin. That is, get this, 97% of the entire world population does not fit within that criteria of size and weight. And so it's
so
like, why do we use that? Guess why we use that? Because using that makes it look like it's a lot safer than it is.
Well, and then you don't have, you're not thinking about like the accumulation effects of like, okay, you can create, safety limits for this one device, but what happens when I have AirPods in and I have an Apple Watch on and I have my cell phone in my pocket and I have, like.
That's what I come to every day, because people go, I've been using these for years, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I've been, whatever. I just take that subject matter for EMFs, put it over here. And for me, I go, okay, let's just take something else. This RFK is talking about food ingredients and things.
Yeah, that's a great example.
If I, excuse me, if I took like a liquid rat poison, got it? Nobody's gonna deny that it's poison. It is designed to kill.
Right.
But if I took 1 part per million, so I took just a tiniest little bit, and I started putting it in your water every day, you wouldn't even taste it, and you'd be like, look, I'm drinking this water, if this was water, I'm drinking this water, and it's fine. No tumors are popping out, I'm not bleeding out of my eyes, it's absolutely fine. The problem with it is when I start putting it in your water, and then the shower, and I put it in your food, and then I put it in the stuff in your refrigerator, I put it in all these different things, that little bit, it always adds, it might add up, let's be scientific about it, it adds up.
Right.
And it depletes your body's detox abilities, your antioxidants in the body, et cetera, et cetera. So it may have been okay to have AirPods, to use those, for a little while or something 5 years ago. But now every time I turn around, there's a new iPhone that has way more emissions than the previous versions. And on top of that, your refrigerator is now smart and Bluetooth connected. Your microwave, most of the things, like your coffee pot is connected to your cell phone.
Yeah, it's
my pool, I can be out to dinner with my wife and turn my hot tub on from across town because everything's Bluetooth device. I mean, on the other side of my garage, my electric company doesn't want to get out of the car to go read my meter anymore.
Yeah.
And so they're putting in these smart meters. The water, everywhere you look, all this wireless technology, which does not stop at your window, it does not stop at your wall of your house or your brick, it goes through that. And so we're sitting right now, you and I, compared to 5-10 years ago, bathing ourselves in EMFs that were never even existing on the planet Earth. And I feel fine, you hopefully feel fine.
Yeah.
But there is an addition, and it's adding up. Here's the other thing it does. It actually wears the systems out that keep us vibrant and healthy and energetic and focused and cognitively active and all these things, so that we age faster. And one of my exciting things in my life right now is to figure out how to age slower and live longer, and in limiting ourselves with EMF and having some things. Some of the stuff you brought today is so cool.
Yay.
But having options that decrease the exposure, number one, and then the detriment when you are exposed to it, number two, is a real key pathway, a hack, if you will, to cellular health and longevity.
Yeah, I feel like I really got that whenever I was talking to the neuroscientist, because when he was talking about communications, it's like, of course we would be just causing more stress on the cells because the cells are using electrical signals to communicate, and now you have this form of communication that is so different than what we're used to, that is like a similar communication, but it's like using a different dialect, and now our bodies are trying to, like uncode, like what is this and what are we supposed to do with it? Like that has to be causing way more stress in our body than 20 years ago.
And it is, and unfortunately, if you talk to very many people, they're like, oh, at that level, it's okay. In fact, we had a video that went to like 7.5 million views on AirPods on this one site, and it blew up, but it blew up with a lot of people who want to protect what they believe and protect their use of their Bluetooth devices. And so there's a lot of hate, and they would grab all these research articles that proved that at that level there was zero harm. And as I went to look at those, because I love going on there and like refuting that, like, let me show you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
But you'll look at those articles, and then you actually start digging into who paid for the article, who paid for the research.
Right.
It's Ericsson, it's telecommunication companies, it's all those people paid for the research to prove that there's no harm in that. And of course they're gonna find out that there's no harm in that. Of course. But if you're me and you see 200 people a day clinically and people are walking in, like I was telling you before we started the taping today, a lady that comes in and I could turn the lights on in the room and she literally her skin starts to turn red. You cannot control capillary beds in your forehead and your ears. Literally, you could see it. Like when you start seeing things like that that are so obvious, that are EMF, I don't want to say poisoning, but super ultra sensitivities like this, you can't deny that. Then you can't deny the tumors that are popping up. And I've got so many elderly people in the office now that have hearing aids that are now having parotid tumors as a result of these hearing aids that are now Bluetooth connected, and they want to hear, and every waking moment, this thing is just cooking them, and it's sad when so many people. There's just robust research out there that proves that that's not what caused it. You can't prove that that's what caused it because there's so much research that proves it wasn't it. And yet when you look at it, all of it was paid for people that make the money on it.
Yeah, so I talked to this guy, his name's Dr. Kent, and he is a electrical computer engineer. And so he had like extensive research background and was working on cell phone development. And then he was asked by the state of New Hampshire to do like an unbiased analysis. And he went into the analysis thinking like, surely it's gonna be safe. I've been told it's safe my entire career. Like, you know, I'm working on cell phone development. EMF is not part of the conversation as far as it being dangerous or harmful or should we try to limit exposure. That's not the goal. The goal is to just make a faster phone. And so when he went in, he said that about 90% of the studies that they looked at show biological harm from legitimate journals, which is important because I think that's what's so hard is like people don't know how to research. I don't really know how to research. Like I rely on my husband who has a science background to look at these papers and like decipher what is really going on because a lot of the papers that show, nothing really says that it's completely safe. It all says like, you know, no real proof that it's harmful type of thing. Like,
but may need more research.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, what's actually happening in the study? Who paid for it? Like, you know, just because it's peer reviewed and published doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good piece of research. And I think that's really difficult in the world we live in because we just wait. That's what I love about the, like the round table that happened when you were talking about Casey Means and RFK and all that stuff. I always look at that because I'm like, I feel like that's coming with EMF. Like eventually we're gonna be sitting around the table like, okay, listen here. Like we've all been fighting about food dyes and you know all of these things that when we educate ourselves about, we can actually make a better choice for our kids. I can choose not to have red food dyes in my home for my kids. I can choose, you know, not to give them certain medications. I can, you know, I can make those choices based on my own education, but I didn't get to choose if there were 5G towers everywhere. You know what I mean? Like that already happened. I don't get to make that choice. So I feel like eventually we're gonna be sitting around the table talking about like, okay guys, like this is a problem. What are we gonna do?
Well, and when you start talking about liability, those companies will never allow a lot of stuff to come to light because of the liability that's associated with it. And so, I mean, you're starting to see that some with just pharmaceutical companies and where we're currently headed with repealing the 1986 vaccine immunity law. But for this, like to your point, like here in the town that we live in, over this last couple of years, they've made us a smart city. And that smart city has these cell towers every so many.
Right, because the faster the wavelength, the more you need.
Right, and I mean, cameras on that are facial recognition cameras, also basically thermography cameras, so in your car, I mean, like they're like literally they can see, and then they're also they're using AI technology to read your house and then your patterns of when you actually, so they can tell when you're home. It's like all this stuff. It all comes with a cost that is higher EMF radiation, more exposure to our kids at the same time. When our kids are going to school and there's no books anymore. Like, where are the books? Maybe there's some books. Like in my kids' school, they go to a private Christian school, they still have some books, but guess what they're all required to have now?
Yeah, tablets
and computers. And that they're going through it. And the average kid now is spending, if you're under the age, I think it's under the age of 18, you're spending at least 7 hours on a phone every single day. 7 hours looking at a screen that retards dopamine production in the brain, leading to sleeplessness, depression, anxiety, etc. And I think we can both agree that like emotional issues in younger people is at an all-time high.
Right.
Like the average a teenager right now, this is a study I just read, an average teenager has more anxiety on a daily basis. The average, not troubled ones.
Yeah.
The average teenager has more anxiety right now than an inpatient in a psych ward in the 60s.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
What's related? So screen time, EMF exposure, toxic schedules, all the rest. But all of this, it all weighs in, it all adds in. And I think it may be difficult or more difficult now as a parent to navigate all of this, to be able to produce a healthy, emotionally healthy human being.
Yeah.
With our social, I'm a little older than you. When I was young, we didn't watch TV. We wanted to go outside and run around all day long. Kids now, they're literally like this. In fact, at one point in time, I had a bunch of my daughter and her friends were over, and they were all upstairs in the movie room, and they had a movie going, and not one person was watching the movie. Guess what they were watching? They were on their phones, and they were all talking to each other and people that weren't there, literally like this, on their phones. And I'm like, have we come to this? Like,
can I turn this off?
I can see you talking to you, and you're 3 feet from each other.
That's
like, what
hilarious.
are we doing? And so we have to be able to come back as a human race.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Okay, so as far as when you're treating a patient, where do you feel EMF kind of falls on the scale of treatment? Diet is really important, all of these things, but when does it come in? At what point? Does it come in right away, or is it more of a...
I think depending on the clinician and the clinic and the type of patients you see, I think it probably varies quite a bit. For us, we see quite a few people we see probably 3 to 5% of the total new patients coming in who have some really, really serious multi-chemical sensitivities, EMF, mold, heavy metal toxicity. And so it has to be addressed right out of the gates. For the average person coming in, they've got a heart issue, cancer, digestive, like Crohn's or something, ulcerative colitis. It definitely has to be issued. It has to be something we talk about.
Yeah.
But so often you can change so many other things that their body comes back on their healing, on line again to heal.
Yeah.
And things, race. We had a lady who went from 126 pounds down to 81 pounds with ulcerative colitis. And I remember having this conversation about Bluetooth devices and phone exposure and stuff like this. But most of it was an 8-degree curve in her low back, some of the food she'd had and she got exposed to. And then we reversed all that. She probably still is exposed to her phone more than she should be, and probably even uses some Bluetooth. But because she is healthy, has enough health, she's pushing through that without symptoms now. Now, here, I go back to that again. Just because you can push through and don't have symptoms does not mean exposure to EMF is not having a negative effect on your long-term life, life expectancy, or cellular health, which is why all of us should limit that exposure as much as we can.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's okay, it's not always the most, I'm still that way, even though I'm I'm an EMF advocate, safety advocate, and I use my phone and computer every day.
I do too.
I'm the creative director, so I'm always on my phone and my computer, so I'm really grateful for technology, but then it's I have to be aware, do the things, to clear my body, to keep it, health, diet, environmental toxins as much as I can to contend with. That's why I really liked Aries. I had tried so many different products. I had done the EMF blockers and the Faraday cages and all of that stuff. And then when I interviewed the CEO a few years ago and kind of got the understanding of okay, this is really helping our body to adapt to what is here. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And this is a part of our reality now. So there's no reason in walking around fearful of it. You can't walk around in a Faraday cage all day. What do we do? So that's why I really liked their products. But what do you do when you are addressing EMF? What do you kind of tell them?
I just say limit exposure completely. Don't have your phone on you. I can't tell you how many tumors I found because women put it in their sports bra right here, or they put it in their yoga pants right here.
Yeah, up against their thigh.
And they have IT band issues, all the rest. So get a wired or tubed set of headphones, which I know is not as easy, it's not as convenient, but we have such addiction to convenience and easy that we got to change it. And then keep your phone away from you, and if you're using it, don't ever talk like this. Put it on speakerphone, period. In fact, if it's a conversation you want people to hear, then get your little wired things out and then use those because it's just not safe. I will say, do I own a pair of AirPods? I do, but I got them for interview purposes. And I I hate using them. In fact, I've gone to something very similar to what we're using today because I looked into even more, and I started seeing where just 15 minutes of using that, it actually increases the temperature of brain tissue for up to 2-3 hours. And cooling and heating is leading to neoplastic activity. I'm like, I'm not gonna have a brain tumor because I wanted to do a bunch of podcasts.
Yeah.
So I started going to this. And so I just tell patients, just try to limit the exposure as much as you can. If it's in your pocket or on your person and you're getting in your car, take it out of your pocket and put it away from you in the car. You know, if you're sitting down at your desk or whatever, then set it away from you. If you're gonna watch a YouTube or some kind of podcast, like even this one,
Pre-download.
Pre-download. Take the phone and set it somewhere and don't hold it. Like you have your own electrical field that you're producing, and when you're literally in physical contact with something that's emitting that, you're changing your entire electrical field, which does have negative consequences over time. So just set it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Don't put your laptop on your
Lap.
Easy
Why do
stuff.
they call it that? Okay, I have a really silly question.
Give it to me.
It might make me sound ill-informed, but okay, so with the
You're in good company.
with the heating and cooling, you got people doing saunas and cold plunges going back and forth, right? But then we're always talking about, you know, these devices that are like heating up the cells. What is the difference?
That's good. That's a great question, and it has a really simple answer.
Okay.
If I take my body and I put it in a cold plunge, or like an infrared sauna, and I heat it up, I'm heating my entire body, and my body, as a consequence of this systemic global change in temperature, has an adaptive, like it's cold, cryotherapy, my body goes into this state, right? Which has crazy great health benefits. Autophagy, rebuilding mitochondria, increased energy, immunity, the whole thing. Heat has very similar effects as well. But when I'm holding a phone or something, or having Bluetooth in the ear, what ends up happening is, it is one specific part of the body, and globally I don't have that defensive mechanism and that adaptive change. So now my body is laid wide open to the changes in a very specific, localized spot, off and on, off and on, off and on again. And even if you love cryotherapy, or you love infrared sauna, or heat therapy, or whatever else, I mean, even cryotherapy, if you're doing it a bunch, you're probably not doing it more than 12, 15 minutes a week. Like you're doing it 1 to 3 minutes at a time. Well, this, back and forth, it's a whole different ballgame, and it's so specific to those things. If it's like the meninges around the brain or spinal cord, you're looking at a meningioma, even though it may be benign cancer, it's still meningioma. You look at, if you have a nerve cell or a brain cell that you actually cause a neoplastic activity to break out, and the #1 brain cancer out there is a glioblastoma, glioma, and it's from the glial cells of the nervous system that wraps the nerve system. And those things, you start damaging DNA through heating and cold, and then just a little bit of something else. Like it doesn't take much. So I've seen so many patients with health issues like that I just don't want to expose myself to that. So when I'm using my phone, I'm going to set my phone over there. If I'm in the car, it's the same thing. And I use like the Faraday bags and the Faraday, like my wireless, what is it, the electrical box that they read how much electricity I'm using, my smart meter. I covered that in a Faraday cage. They sell those online.
That's smart.
They did to my gas meter. And so I took literally a material, like almost a cottony feeling Faraday bag, and I literally lassoed it around that. And it was so effective because I actually have a meter, which are super cheap. It's $50 to $200 for a meter. And you can tell how much EMF's coming off and dirty energy and everything else. And so I tested stuff. And when I put my phone in that Faraday bag, a small one, 0. I was like, this is awesome. So I can even keep it on me and I don't have any problem. The problem with that, as I found, was
you're not getting your phone calls.
You're not getting a text, a phone call. Like if my family needs me, my children have an emergency, I can't use, so I really don't use it. So all I do now
you got one of these.
It's awesome. So when you showed up, I'd never been exposed to this type of technology. I was looking through this, By the way, I can't wait to deep dive that because it's already on my phone right there. Just so you know.
Awesome.
So I can't wait to look at it. So it's good.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you're getting introduced.
It's a blessing. I'm serious.
Well, when you were talking about your own body having, you know, like its own field, that's kind of what this is doing, is helping your own biotropic field
maintain itself.
Yeah. And so it's such a hard thing to explain. It sounds really woo-woo, but then when you see the brain scans that they do, it's so wild. Like we've done some on like Canada basketball players and Macy Barber and all these different people, and you watch their like baseline brain activity, you know, just kind of staring off to the abyss. Then you watch their brain activity after being on a cell phone for like 10 minutes. Then you put the Aries device on, you do another 10 minutes on the phone, and their brain looks better than it did when they did the original baseline. I'm like, what? What is going on?
Exactly. And you know, you see so much stuff with things like this, and people do like muscle testing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not against muscle testing, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but there's so much out there that could be totally weird, not actual scientifically valid, all those things. But when you actually start seeing like cognition tests, electrical field tests, things like this, you can't deny that.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to say something too for everybody watching.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about EMF exposure, somehow we always get into the topic, and I even went there too, about like brain tumors and cancers and stuff. But that's such a small sliver of what EMF technology actually produces. It just produces less health over time, slowly, like getting cooked in a pot, slowly turning the heat up. Yeah. And what most people will see as changes, and I want people to really recognize this, if your energy's going down a little bit, could be the technology. If your immunity's going down a little bit, could be the technology. Eyesight, which is just an extension of brain function, blood pressure, cognition, you're just not as sharp recalling. Like there's so much of this that's related to literally the technology that we're exposed to, and yet people don't put two and two together.
Yeah, those like simple things that we're so used to just not feeling 100% every day. Like I always, you know, I think I see a lot of mothers, like, 'cause I'm a mother, I have 2 toddlers. So it's like, you just convince yourself that this is just how mothers are supposed to feel. And I'm like, no. Like if we clean up the diet and we clean, you know, like there's certain things that get our hormones back in check. Like we can feel good again, guys. Our life isn't over when we have kids at age 25.
Yeah, which is why I love what we do in the office, because when we're not just the symptom-based thing, are you feeling better today? You're not feeling better today? Ugh. Like when people come in and they get their life back, people, I mean, I go in my office, people go, how are you doing today? I'm like, there's so many miracles in one day that I don't know how to answer that question. So I'm like, well, if I was any better, I'd just levitate from room to room with people, because I'm just doing amazing. Just because people are like, I just didn't know I could feel this good. I just didn't know I could get my life back. I didn't know I could get off all my drugs. We had one lady 38 separate medications a day. And
like my
through
grandmother.
technology like this, and then spinal correction, and then just working through, you know, diet, exercise, and detox, and how the body actually works, and just bring everything back online. I mean, it's encouraging to see people come back.
Yeah, you never get bored, I
Never.
bet. After
It's
all
so
these
good.
years, I'm like, I don't know if I could do the same thing for that many years. But if you have miracles happening every day, that's...
I lovingly call it the Miracle Factory at the office,
Yes,
so.
I love it so much. Your office, like, y'all, that's amazing. Like, even the supplements that you have, I'm like, they know what's up with That's awesome.
See it. You got to get that regenerative organic stuff.
Yes. Okay, so tell people where they can find you and how to connect with you.
So we are in Capel, so North Texas. So we're in Capel, which is just north of Dallas. And then we have one about 20 minutes away from this clinic, which is South Lake.
Do you go back and forth, or?
I do. But we have doctors there now that people want more than me.
Yeah.
So like it's really fun now.
Nice.
So yeah. And we do a lot of stuff. So we have hyperbaric, we have thermography, which is a great alternative to mammography. Most people don't know that mammography increases your likelihood of breast cancer.
It's so funny. That not funny, but
1.9%. We're talking about non-ionizing radiation with EMF, but ionizing radiation, we're signing up for mammography. I mean, woman gets 10 mammograms in her lifetime, she's almost 20% more likely to have breast cancer. So thermography is a great alternative to that. But we do a lot of stuff in the office, mostly chiropractic, nutritional therapy, just find the cause, fix the cause, and get people healthy again from, you know, an hour old to 100 years old.
I love it so much. Thank you. I really appreciate
Thanks for
this
having me today.
conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have a great one.